Welcome, I'm Brian the Builder, and in this video I am putting together this Chaos Knights army set. I'm not going to be following literally the directions on this. Essentially I am, but I'm also going to be building the alternate weapons that wouldn't just be for the Knight Abominant, but I'm also going to be adding the weapons for the Knight Rampager, and then basically painting it in a different color scheme than what we see here on the cover. So, with that said, let's get building. Alright, now it is time to install some magnets, right? So I've got a smaller one, a 1/16 by 5/16, right? So it's only 1/16 thick, 5/16 around, and it's an N42. So it's not super strong, but the idea is that it really doesn't need to be. It doesn't have to hold a ton of weight. And this one that's going to go on the body, or inside the body, is an N52, and it's 7/16 around by 1/16 inch thick. So the idea now is I've marked a black dot on both sides to help me remember that when these two are positioned, the black dot should be invisible, right? I shouldn't be able to see it. So when I place this onto the body, right, I'll place it with the black dot down. And then when I place this one into the body cavity, it'll be the black dot up, so that the two non-black dot surfaces will touch each other. I need to hollow out these basically, I guess, rib pieces where there should be light shining through. And I'm also going to need to hollow out the eyes of the face. This is the main face. Actually pretty cool. Right, and I'm thinking that I might just open up the mouth also. So I'm just going to drill a whole bunch of little tiny holes and then use an X-Acto to get between the holes and hopefully have a nice clean opening through all of these rib pieces. So I have the first one, right, a series of holes there. So now I'm going to take the X-Acto and we're just going to try to connect the dots here. While I was thinking about needing to hollow out the parts of the face, I realized that I was going to need to figure out how the head actually was going to allow wiring to run through it. So I took a minute, or 45, to hollow out the inside of the head to allow wiring to run through. I need to hollow out these eyes. So one of the best ways I have found is to use a thumbtack. You get good control, it's got a nice fine point, And I'm going to do my best to actually get that in the center. And just kind of make a little spot. So that's pretty close to actually having my little pinhole in the center there. Alright, and then I should be able to use my little tiny drill bit here to start this. That seems like that should be good. Alright, so that's a nicely centered opening. That should work really well. All right, let's attach some magnets. All right, so that black dot on the bottom, and I want to line that up with the peg. All right, and then a little zip kicker to lock it in place. Then I'm going to come back and actually give that kind of little edge just a little bit more. Alright, now for the ones that are basically captive on the inside. Alright, and again, I just want to watch to make sure that the black dot is away, so it's basically hidden. Now I'm going to load up the inside with some of the, to me, is like fine, or I guess thin, the extra thin. And then when the magnet goes in, now, if I were really smart, I'd actually get some clamps. I have already installed one, Mega LED from Evan Designs. It's a bright red LED. So it is now time to install the other one. So I did drill out these holes here a little bit bigger to make room for the resistors here. I did also add some light diffusion to the back of the rib panels. Alright, so the cutouts are good, but without the light diffusion in there, it was really noticeably a hot spot behind that LED. So with the diffusion there, and all that diffusion is, it's actually not any special light diffuser. It's the sheet of kind of paper that comes between the decals. So it's just the decal protector sheet, and it's about perfect to diffuse the light. Obviously that's not really its intent, but it works great for that. And then I just used a bit of, Tester's clear glue for like kind of canopy parts for like model airplanes and stuff. All right, something like that ought to be really good. right, that is nicely locked into place. It's pretty close to evenly balanced. It's definitely not perfect, but once it's lit and behind the diffusion, I don't think you'll be able to tell. So let's wire these two together real quick as a little test here. All right, now with a little coin cell, oops, backwards, we have very bright LEDs. Then when I take the rib panel here, place it over, the diffusion behind those rib panels looks really cool. As I have tried to kind of figure out the best way to do this, it does seem like one of these mega LEDs is going to be the best solution for behind the 3 eyepieces, and then a smaller chip LED will be mounted right below that for behind the mouth. I've made the mistake in the past of trying to pull too hard on these and pull the wire right off of the resistor, so you want to be careful not to do that. Would have been bad. Alright, now with that extra in there and the zip kicker is basically setting it almost instantly, that guy should be good. And then I am going to have to sand off a little bit of the super glue right there to make sure, well, let's just see. There's a little bit blocking the face piece from going on, but well, not too bad. That actually fits on there just fine. And you can kind of see the LED is really nicely centered behind the mouth. Then you can't really see the one that's behind the eyes, but with a little bit of diffusion behind it, that actually should work really well. So now I'm just going to cut a small piece of my not diffusion paper. All right, so I'll just kind of guess. Something about that big should fit behind that face. And so let's grab this, and this definitely doesn't need to be neat, right? So I just kind of need it stuffed back in here behind the face and in front of the LEDs, and that kind of just softness of the transparent paper should allow it to just soften up the light distribution and make it look far more, I guess, like it's actually coming from each individual eye and not from one single kind of spotlight. The paper on the inside of the face here is set up pretty well. It should be ready to install without a problem. Alright, so I'm not gluing it on quite yet, just want to do an LED test. So with the diffusion paper in there, my homemade diffusion paper, right, I put the battery on. I definitely have some light leak around the edge, but that should go away. And I get some really nice bright eyes, and the mouth looks really cool. So even, I believe, giant tusks. Once the, gosh, it's hard to hold everything. Let's see if we can get this put on here and take a look. Even with the mask on, I should be getting plenty of light coming through. But that looks really cool. All right, I like that. You can actually see all three eyes in there really well. Well, one's an eye, two are lenses, and then the mouth looks pretty great. So let's get this attached and then mount it onto the body. So what I've kind of figured out, and I did already kind of hollow out the mouth and the back of the head where it attaches to the body to give room. I did drill out the eye already. But as I'm trying to fit this mega chip LED in here, there needs to be a little bit more space carved out. So I'm going in with my flat bladed X-Acto and just kind of digging out that space. So trying to be careful and not cut my fingers, I'm doing this down against the desk and just kind of pushing slowly and then taking out little wedges, little chunks, and then just kind of moving over and doing it again, and then just kind of going back and forth, flipping the head around and removing small bits. All right, this head doesn't need as much space carved out as the other one did. It's got a bigger hollow cavity in there, and a smaller LED would have fit without a problem. But I have a couple of those megas and nothing else to use them for, at least not at the moment anyway. But they're kind of big for a lot of stuff, and making just a little extra room inside these heads actually works out really well. That should be good. Make sure my wire's into the opening here. Just a little more super glue in the other side here. Alright, then in order to actually bond the two halves together, hit it with a little bit of the Decima extra thin. last 6 LEDs here are 3 volts, 3 millimeter solid orange LED bulbs. There we go. I think the challenge in a lot of ways is just finding the right kind of spot to hold on to things to allow to get glue where you want it. Now I'm going to hit that quick with some zip kicker, so that should be pretty solid in there. And then I can go ahead and just add a bit more around the edge. As a light block. So then, as I go ahead and add the rest, alright, this one's a little bit tighter fit, so it holds itself in place a little better. And then with that zip kicker on there, this should actually bond really quickly. It is time to actually get these pieces soldered, so that after I put on the carapace lid, I don't have to worry about them ever coming apart again. There was a minor issue with installing these stacks first, right? It really doesn't want those installed first, otherwise the carapace lid doesn't actually fit on. I had to remove the 2 tiny little stacks that come off the back of each of these. They'll be easy enough to replace, so I'm not too worried about it, but I did have to remove those in order to make room for the carapace to go on. So now I'm going to take a little bit of this, I guess it's soldering paste. It's not, I mean it's flux pretty much, but soldering paste. And then, let's see, I'm going to get a clean toothpick because it's kind of difficult to get it. The easiest way, if you have the room, is you just kind of dip the end of the piece that's being soldered, the end of the wires, just dip it into the soldering paste. And what this does is essentially kind of cleans the wires at the same time as allowing the solder to flow more easily. So we just need kind of a generous amount on there. And then the heat from the tip of the soldering iron will melt that in and help the solder flow. So, that's a little much. If you're new to soldering, don't stress on it too much. It's one of those things, it's pretty straightforward. You want to try to keep the heat away from your surface of your model so you don't melt it. You can actually use the soldering iron to create some battle damage too. But relatively thin, light solder and a soldering iron that is temperature controllable, I think are very helpful. And then with the soldering iron, my soldering iron is set to about 200, maybe 220. So it's relatively low temp. And then when I just touch the solder to the wire and the soldering iron, maybe the soldering iron might not be all the way hot yet. Oh, that's working. So then between the heat and the soldering paste that pulls down into the wires really nicely, and then we shouldn't have to worry about those ever coming apart again. Alright, that looks pretty good. So at this point, everything's pretty much base coated with lead belcher that needs to be. So now I think the next step is going to be just putting in the ivory color. So I have Vallejo's model color ivory to do all of the kind of main armor panels. So let's get to it. with probably somewhere between 5 and 7 coats of ivory on all of those pieces. I think they're done. I can't see through to the gray anywhere. I did actually expect the Vallejo model color ivory to coat a little better than that, but probably my own fault for going over such a dark color. So this red appears to be a really nice match to the images I've found of Decima and the Incarnate Slaughter. So a couple coats of this, because it's obviously going to go over the ivory a little differently than it goes over the gray. So a couple coats of this ought to be really nice. So this is going to take a bit longer, so I don't actually get any of this onto the ivory. So I really don't want to have to go back over that again. But I think that's going to look really good. Alright, hopefully this one will be more like 2 thin coats and not 7. No matter what, if you're painting stuff like this, just be patient, right? This is supposed to be fun, so hopefully you're having fun while doing it, and then 7 coats doesn't really matter. I do have to say though, that after 3 or 4 coats, I wasn't having as much fun painting ivory as I was when I first started. The color does look fantastic though, now that it's all on there. Alright, I'm going to keep painting on this nice black-red trim, and I will be right back. So now I'm going to use a bit of Runelord Brass to do all of kind of the exhaust stacks. It's kind of a light brassy color, and to me, I believe it feels like a good color for this type of element. I like this as a lighter brass color. My dark brass scorpion, just feels too dark. I tend to use that more for like the skulls to get those to pop. As I've been working on this Chaos Knight, right, the Knight Abominant, it does have a receiver on the top of the carapace for something. There is no weapon in the kit that actually fits where the hole on the top of the carapace is. So in 3ds Max, I'm going to go ahead and actually make something to fit, really, and I think I measured the top of the carapace and something about 35 millimeters wide. So let's set that. And I don't know, maybe 10, 15 millimeters tall. That's not quite, so let's go more like 20. 18 looks good. And I am going to make a custom weapon to fit the top. So let's just make this 9 so we get a full rounded curve. And this is going to similarly at least mimic what the Night Despoiler weapon is on the top. Now, I believe it should be a good time to do some more metallics. So I'm going to try and pick out some logical spots that I believe should be, or at least could be, copper. I have used a bunch of Lamian Medium and mixed in a bit of Wild Rider Red, and I'm just going to run that into the, I guess, windows of the cockpits here. And I really want it to settle into the edges. To paint a bunch of these chaos runes, I am using the sheet from the model kit as reference. I don't know chaos runes offhand, so hopefully I'll actually be able to paint some of these in ways that I guess make sense. Alright, all of the assembly has been completed. It is now time to start with Agrax Earthshade on the lower parts. So I have thinned this down greatly with Lamian Medium. So I'm just going to go around and put the thinned version onto all of the armor panels. brushes are done, I am going to attempt to do some pretty simple, just kind of sponge effect to make it look even more beat up. Now I am going through and essentially adding a glaze, really thin base color, back over all of the shaded parts. to get that color to, I guess, pop back out, because the purple glaze or the purple wash, purple shade really darkened everything down, and that's great. It looks really cool, but I do want some of those original colors to pop a bit more. As I'm finishing up, I'm just going back in and adding just a little bit more Druchii Violet to just break up the edges from that final highlight layer. And I'm just kind of modeling it and stippling it around to just make sure that the surface of these guys doesn't feel too smooth and even. I want them to feel a little bit more like bumpy and pitted. With a couple of the base coats on these guys done, I'm going to go around at the moment and do some of the brown leather bits. For all the gold trim on these guys, I have mixed pretty much equal amounts of Liberator Gold and Retributor armor. I'm now going to use Agrax Earthshade. Alright, so Seraphim Sepia on the bone parts. As I am finishing up the base here, I just have to say, if you've stuck around this long, I truly appreciate your time. This has been a really great build. It's been a ton of fun. So I guess I apologize for the length of this being an hour long almost, but it has definitely been an incredible project. The LEDs look so cool. So stick around for just a little bit longer for the grand reveal. Once again, thanks for watching. I hope you liked, I hope you subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one.